Hello, I'm Ollie and this is CriminOlly, where I talk about crime, pulp, horror, that kind of thing. Today, 4 tips for success if you're doing the Read What You Own challenge. So tomorrow, the 5th of November, is the day when we kick off this year's Read What You Own challenge. If you don't know what that is, it's a challenge I do every year where I give up buying books for a period of time. I set myself a goal. It's always been, for me personally, it can be different for you, but for me personally, it's been a goal of reading 100 books that I already own before I buy any new books. Now that might sound like you are giving something up, but I don't think of it that way. I think of it in the opposite way. I think of it as a time when I am pausing my book buying in order for me to rediscover my existing library. In my announcement video for this event or this challenge, I use the distracted boyfriend meme in the thumbnail picture, and that's definitely how I think about the event. It's so easy to forget about all of the fantastic books we've already got because we are always on the lookout for new books. And I love buying books. I love buying, second-hand books in particular, but new books as well. I love the thrill of, an author I really like releasing a new book and getting that book and being able to read it. The release of Joe Hill's King's Sorrow this last month was, a really joyful experience for me because I really like Joe Hill's work and I really, really enjoyed that book. But I do think we tend in the modern age to always be distracted by the new. And it's important sometimes to just pause and think about what we've already got. Now, I have, as people who watch the channel will know, an extensive library of books for me to choose from for this Read What You Own challenge. And since announcing the Read What You Own challenge, I have bought more books. I have a book haul video which I need to film, which will be very, very long indeed. I would suggest not trying to count the number of books in that book haul video and comparing them to my target for the Read What You Own challenge, because you might find that the numbers don't match up. I suspect that book haul video, what I'm trying to say is I suspect that book haul video will end up having more than 100 books in it. And that might seem ridiculous. It might seem completely counter to the whole point of doing the Read What You Own challenge. But I think that's only if you think the point of doing the Read What You Own challenge is to give up buying books. And that for me isn't the point. The point is to focus on the books I've already got. And that is definitely what I'll be doing for the next few months. So I've put up an announcement video for this and I will link to that. But very briefly, this is a challenge where you can choose your own targets. We have tiers like 25 books, 50 books, 100 books, so on. And also like you can do it by page count rather than a number of books, but you can do it in other ways as well if you would prefer. So you could say you're going to pause buying books for X number of weeks or months. It's completely up to you. And what's also completely up to you is to give yourself like rules, personal rules for doing the challenge, which may well be and tend to be for people, situations in which you will allow yourself to buy a book without breaking the challenge. So what we don't want to do with this is make it difficult for people. We want this to be an enjoyable experience, and I've always found it to be an enjoyable experience, but it's important to think about how you can make it achievable for yourselves, and that may be by coming up with some rules. So as I said, I've done an announcement video. My 3 co-hosts, who are Greg from Another Bibliophile Read, Crystal from Fibre Artsy, and MJ from Reading This Life, have also done announcement videos. I'll link their videos in the description to this one so you can check out their thoughts as well. They've all done the challenge before, so they will all have their own suggestions and tips and things like that. But I've got 4 tips for you that, based on my experience of doing the challenge, will make it easier for you to complete it. So the first one of those is think really carefully about how many books you want to read, about what you want your goal to be, and think, frame that in the way that I've talked about it in this video. I think don't think about it as giving up buying books. Think about it as reading the books you've already got, and think about how long, in terms of number of books, number of pages, number of weeks or months, how long can you go only reading the books you've got before you start feeling like like the pressure, before it stops being enjoyable. So I think that's a really important way to set the target for yourself. Don't pick an arbitrary number. Think about how long you can go through that experience for, how long it will continue to be enjoyable. For me, I have a huge number of books, so 100 books is an appropriate target, but it definitely won't be an appropriate target for everyone. Okay, question two. Rule number 2, or suggestion number 2, is keep it simple. And in particular, keep it simple in terms of the rules you set yourself. What people tend to do with these rules is say, if an author I really like releases a new book, I'm allowed to buy that. Or if I go on holiday, I'm allowed to buy that. And that's fine. You can set whatever rules you want. What I have personally found, though, is, and typically, when people set these rules, they say, if I buy a book in that way, then it doesn't count towards the challenge. So you set your target at the start of the challenge based on your library at that point in time, and if you come into, in whatever way, new books during the course of the challenge, you can read them, but if you do, they don't count towards your total. What I've found in the past is the more get outs, for want of a better description, that I give myself, the more difficult it is to complete the challenge. So I tend to try and keep it quite simple and have a limited number of reasons why I can buy a book. Because as soon as you get a book in, a new book, or new to you book, that isn't going to count towards your goal, if you read that, you are extending the duration of your challenge, basically. So I think it's important to be realistic with your rules, so you are not making the challenge impossible for yourself, but also don't make it so easy for yourself to buy new books that you end up doing this thing forever because you're constantly getting new books in and reading them. The other rule I think is a useful one to have or to think about is how you will treat DNF. So if you DNF a book, if you don't finish a book, do you count that towards your goal? I personally think, if you've DNF'd a book and you're saying, right, I'm just not getting on with this book at all, I'm not going to read it in the future, you've basically taken it out of your library. So I think it's fine to count DNFs in that situation. If it's a book where maybe you read the first few chapters and you think, I think I'm quite liking this, but it's not the right time for me, then I wouldn't necessarily count that towards your target. But it's completely up to you how you do that. So that's the second thing, and I'll come to my personal rules for doing it this time in a moment. Third tip is shop your shelves. Think about your shelves as a bookstore that you are walking into, and get excited about the books that you've got there. Spend some time, looking through them. If, like me, your books are not all visible, so, I've got another row of books behind these books. I've got books boxed up in the garage as well. Spend some time looking through those books and really getting excited about what you've got to read, about the time ahead of you where you've got all these fantastic books that you already own that you haven't read yet, and use that experience to inform your target, as I talked about in tip 1. And then the fourth one is, I think it works well to be more of a mood reader when you are doing the Read What You Own challenge. Typically, I'm someone who sets quite rigid TBRs for myself each month. When I'm doing Read What You Own, I find it easier if I don't lean quite so heavily into events I'm doing and things like that. Because as soon as you start doing that, you start thinking, oh, I haven't, you might be doing an event where basically you have to read a book of a certain type to take part in the event. But there's loads of different prompts that you can do if you want to. And you might think, oh, I haven't got a prompt for that book. Should I give myself a rule that means I can buy a prompt for that book? And then you get into that loop of reading things that are not going to contribute towards your total. So for me personally, I'd still do events during the Read What You Own challenge, but I tend to be a bit more relaxed about them. I give myself a bit more flexibility in what I read for them, and I do tend to be more of a mood reader, because that's a way to to keep enjoying and being excited about the books that you are reading, rather than I think TBRs tend to encourage you to think about the books you haven't got rather than the books you have got. So that's my fourth suggestion. So let me just quickly do my recap on what my target is, and then talk about the rules I'm setting myself this year. So target 100 books. Simple as that. I will read 100 books I already own before buying any new books. with the following exceptions. So those exceptions are, so the first one is these are all quite specific actually. And the first one is very, very specific. So in previous years, when I've done the Read What You Own challenge, Humble Bundle, which if you don't know is a website that offers like video games and things like that, like bundles of video games at lower costs, but they also do books. And twice previously when I've done the challenge, they've offered a bundle of Lone Wolf and Cub comics. So Lone Wolf and Cub is a Japanese samurai comic that I used to really love in the late 80s, early 90s, when it was first published in English. And twice I've missed out on getting this bundle because I've been on the Read What You Own challenge. So if they do that bundle again, I will allow myself to buy it. The second one is for the CriminOlly book club that I run for my patrons and channel members. If I need to buy a book to take part in that, then I will do. But I will, try and get the book out of the library. So we've decided what our books are for November and December, but we haven't yet, decided for the first few months of next year, which my challenge will probably run into. So I will allow myself, if I need to buy books for that, but I'll try and get them from the library, or maybe listen to the audiobook on Spotify or something like that, as my first option. And similarly for buddy reads, so I do buddy reads with my patrons sometimes. So again, I will allow myself to buy the book should I need to if I can't get it from the library for those. The next one is a bit more of a general one, but it's one that has never, I don't think I've ever come across this situation in previous Read What You Own challenges. So I don't think it's a rule that I'll have to use, but I wanted to put it in there just in case. So this rule is if I am out and about, so not online, but if I'm physically in a bookstore and I see a book that is a book from a series or an author that I am collecting, so a difficult to get book basically, not just a random book that I could pick up anytime, but a book that is difficult to get, particularly if it's at a good price, I will allow myself to buy it. And then the final one, which is the one that I did state in my announcement video for this, is like gifts, books that are sent to me as gifts, and books that I get from authors or publishers for review, I will allow to come in. But with any of these restrictions or these rules, if I do get the book and if I read it, then I won't count it towards the challenge. So hopefully I won't need to invoke any of those rules apart from probably the book club / buddy reads one and the gifts / review copies one. The other two are really just safety nets just in case. So that's how I'm thinking about Read What You Own this year. Do let me know if you're going to be taking part in the comments. Let me know if you've done it before, and if you've got tips of your own you'd like to share with people, then put those in the comments so that people can see them. Anyway, I will leave it there. If you are taking part in Read What You Own starting tomorrow, then very best of luck to you. Thanks for being part of it. But yes, I will leave it there and say, as always, thanks very much for watching. I hope you're safe and well out there. I hope you're all reading good stuff, and I'll speak to you again very soon. Cheerio.